Welcome to What's the Scenario with PLRB, where we explore claims and coverage scenarios related to insurance professionals. I'm Alissha Watley.
I'm Tim Havler.
And I'm Mike Broad.
So, Tim, what's the scenario?
The insured had a plumbing leak in the kitchen and one single cabinet was damaged, but the other 7 cabinets were fine, as was everything else. The adjuster agreed to replace the one cabinet with like, kind, and quality, but he discovered this model of cabinet had been discontinued by the manufacturer. He found what he believed to be a good substitute, but when he ran it by the insured said it was unacceptable. It was a shade or two different color from all the other cabinets in the kitchen. The insured wanted all 8 kitchen cabinets replaced, so they would all be a uniform color, and she wanted all new cabinets in the dining room because the kitchen cabinets are supposed to be a perfect match with the dining room cabinets. So I would say this scenario, out of all questions that I get as a PLRB attorney, and I've been doing this a long time now, this one is by far the most common.
Really?
It's not always cabinets. Maybe it's flooring or curtains, carpeting, siding, roof tiles, windows, you name it. But it's always the replacement is just a little bit off and it doesn't match. And do we then have to replace everything just so that it matches? So I don't know. One of the cool things about what we do is that you get into so much more than insurance. Like in a previous episode, we got deep into biology with bees, and now this one, it's interior design today.
No, because here's the thing. I'm all about replacing the one cabinet. I get it. But I'm that weirdo who would notice every single time that one cabinet was different from the rest, and it would drive me crazy.
Yes, and I know people who are like that, and I am not like that. It's subjective and a matter of individual taste, but I mean, there are some people who you could point out the difference and they'd look close and say, I guess I notice a difference. But then there are some people like you where you just see that out of the corner of your eye and it is not good, and we can't handle this.
Yeah, it really does become an eyesore. I can even tell difference in like font sizes. If I'm doing a document and the font sizes changes slightly, or it's a different size, or just a different font, I'm like, have to change all of it.
Yes.
I think I'll have to fact check you on that one, Alissha. But
I
will say, Tim, I'm going to be watching everything you ever type up to make sure the font is like, all right, I'm on it. But we had 3 kids here. We've been in our place for 20 plus years. So yeah, if I wanted perfection in each of our cabinets, that died after about year 2. So I guess I can live with the little imperfections.
Mm-hmm. And
right,
and I don't have any children, and I don't have that issue. So I'm like, if it looks off, it's off.
You can afford to have a perfect interior design. It will not get destroyed within a week.
True.
So Tim, let's talk about this a little bit. With matching, where have courts decided anything? What could you tell us from your area of expertise on how people look at things that might not match up perfectly?
So with matching, I would say the first thing you do is check your policy. Some policies actually have some provisions somewhere way down in the conditions that say something about matching. I saw one the other day that said something like matching is not required for discontinued products. And those types of exclusions have been tested in the courts with mixed results. So I would say, yes, you can use those exclusions, but you got to be careful with them. You got to know your state law. It could be regulation. It could be something in unfair claims practices. It could be something the Department of Insurance issued a bulletin 10 years ago. In some states, those will be successful, and in other states, they won't be. So again, first check your policy. Next, check the state. I'd say most of the time what it comes down to is you need to provide a reasonable match.
Okay.
That's in the majority of cases, in the majority of states, that's usually the question we're being asked, because it's what do we mean by reasonable? This one cabinet, if it's one shade of color off, is that reasonable or not? It sounds like to Alissha, it wouldn't be. To someone else, maybe it is. You can have two people who are both acting in good faith, could look at that with entirely different subjective perspectives. It's just aesthetics. So I guess this brings me to a broader point that sometimes the law gives us a nice, hard, clear, crisp rule. Like you have to respond to a proof of loss within 30 days. Okay, great. It's hard to argue about that. But in other areas, you can't do that, because think about all the things that would go into whether a cabinet looks nice in the existing kitchen. It's how much is the color off? How do you even measure that? What's the room lighting like? How far apart are these cabinets? What does the rest of the kitchen look like? What's the interior decor context? So you're never going to come up with a rule for every single possible situation. It's really more of the eye test. That's frustrating for adjusters who want to do the right thing and they like to know what the right thing is. But it's a flexible rule. It's be reasonable. You got to get with the parties, discuss, negotiate, talk to the insured. And ultimately, if you can't come to an agreement and it really comes down to it, hypothetically, that goes to a court. So you're probably looking at a jury who's going to make that decision, and that's entirely unpredictable.
And quite honestly, it might be cheaper for me to just take the one off-colored cabinet and then just of my own dime make all of them look the same. Do a refinish and restain.
Right, and every insured is going to act differently about that.
Yep.
And you know, there's one, I don't want to make this sound completely subjective. There's one objective thing we can look at, and that's you can think about, does this affect the market value of the real estate? So if you got, I mean, you're never, I don't think you're going to get an appraisal on a kitchen, but you can just imagine these sort of things that you think about when you're coming up with the value of a house. Or if you sold the house, would it sell for slightly less because that cabinet is off? So by looking at the financials or the money, that's more of an objective thing that you can anchor yourself to.
I was going to ask a question, Tim, because generally most policies require that there has to be some kind of physical damage or something. So to the undamaged cabinets that weren't impacted by the water, would that come into play here at all, even if there was a slight issue in matching?
You're right. Property insurance is only going to cover the physical loss. And in this claim, the physical loss was only the one cabinet. So you're right to wonder, why are we even thinking about all the other ones? Yeah. And the answer is the repair of that one cabinet still has to be done, and it has to be an adequate repair. So if we're putting the insured back into the position as if the loss never occurred, they had a nice matching set of cabinets. And if we replace this one physically damaged cabinet with a different color, that's in some sense a substandard replacement. So we aren't really even repairing the physical loss in that way.
Yeah.
And you know, that's not totally uncommon. Other costs that are non-physical, they're part of claims all the time. If you have a lightning strike that damages your electrical and you need to take out the drywall, even though the drywall wasn't damaged by the lightning, and put back the drywall when you're done, you know, that's included in the cost to repair the electrical.
Yep.
And construction permits and architect's fees, non-physical, yet those are included too.
So it might get to that whole like, kind, and quality. So if you can't replace a cabinet with the quote unquote like, kind, and quality, that might make an argument that you would have to do more than one cabinet. Would that be fair, you think?
Yes. And, you know, besides the color issue, you mentioned a good thing with that like, kind, and quality. I was wondering from your adjuster perspective, how you would go about initially trying to find that cabinet that the original was discontinued.
Yeah, most you can go out to folks that are in the cabinet making industry. Even some of the big box stores can give you a good handle on who, if you can find out who manufactured the original cabinets, those would be the folks I'd go out to first. And sometimes you would have to go to a specialty cabinet maker who might be able to get really close, because usually the color is determine what kind of stain is put on the wood in a lot of cases. So usually you can match that up pretty quick. So in my mind, Tim, it's always finding the right expert. Your expert craftsmen out there that do cabinet work can help guide you in the right direction. Or there are also restoration folks and others in the industry that have expertise here who can help you identify what the cabinet was and hopefully could work with you and the insured in order to get hopefully back up to that like kind of quality that makes everybody happy. So you have options if you involve the right craftsman and expertise. And that's what I enjoyed about being an adjuster is you didn't have to be an expert in anything. You just had to know who to call or email to come out and help you make those calls.
Very good. Very good. And what do we think about the dining room cabinets in a different room? So say we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. We'll replace all the kitchen cabinets because Alicia's the insured and it's just not acceptable to her. And we kind of agree. So we'll give you the 8 cabinets, but
Yay.
now she wants the dining room too, because those new 8 cabinets are now slightly off from the dining room.
So this is where I would be like, if it's not the same room, different lighting, it's not within view of each other, I'd be okay with that. As long as whatever cabinets are in that room are all the same, I'd be okay with that.
Or you could always make the old argument, Tim, that Alissha, guess what? Now you can upgrade your cabinets in the other room too. And look, you've got one room totally taken care of, minus your deductible that may apply in your kitchen. Now, if you want to replace ones in the dining room, look at that.
So is that even allowed?
Everything's negotiable.
I don't think it would be necessary just on the principles of matching to go into a different room.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I don't want to say anything for sure because it's so visual that unless you see a picture, or even better, unless you're really there, it's hard to tell. So maybe there's something about the layout of this house that like it kind of looks bad. I would say it seems very doubtful. If you can't see them at the same time, then very, very, very doubtful.
Yeah, if it wasn't one continuous kind of woodworking from one room to the other, that would be a hard call to make. But I do like how the attorney here in our group goes with it's a case-by-case basis that you have to further investigate and explore.
Mike, I'm always willing to listen.
So yeah, I would be okay if they're different in the dining the than in the kitchen. What do you call it? The line of sight. I'm okay with that.
Yes, line of sight, absolutely something that can be taken into consideration.
What if we threw a wild card in here at you though, Tim? Because I like to do that every now and again. Let's say it's my house. It's not Alicia's perfect mansion that she has over there, but my place that's a little less
polished.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Alissha. That's a good word. And maybe my cabinet's already, the one kid's throwing knives, practicing his marksmanship. So they're a little cut up and whatnot. One's a little stained from some food coloring accident that happened with somebody else. So I've already got cabinets that aren't quite perfect. And if I'm going to complain now that I want everyone to match, that's going to be tough to do unless your contractor also throws knives and works with food coloring.
So if there's a mismatch because of damage that pre-existed the loss, so you said a couple cabinets have scratches, a couple cabinets maybe have dings, and I would say that that's matching should not be given for pre-existing mismatch.
What
Sorry,
you call
Mike.
A mismatch and damage was my daughter's fantastic artwork with food coloring. So one person's damage is another person's art.
Again, subjective.
Well, it's not the repair that's causing the mismatch. It was just how it was before. So matching is for when the insurer's repair is what's causing the problem.
Gotcha. So in other words, we just have to do some more knife throwing and food coloring to the new cabinets to get them to match the old ones. Is that where you're going, Tim?
There you go. And it's interesting you bring that up because this comes up commonly with siding. A lot of times you'll get a little part of siding that is new, and new siding next to old siding is not the same color.
There's a difference, right?
But you know that this siding, it's on the exterior of the house. It's going to get the UV radiation. It's going to get rain. It's going to get wind. It's going to get all of the exterior elements. So you know that within a couple months, it will fade right into the level of the old siding again. And say within 2 months, you know that it's going to be then virtually the same color. I think that's a fair consideration for the insurance company, that if it only takes a couple of months and then it'll match, yeah, that's reasonable.
Then your line of sight arguments there, Tim, might come more into play too with siding and or maybe your roof, because you can't see all the slopes at one time potentially, or all sides of the home at one time. So even if there's a slight deviation, might not be that big of a deal potentially.
That's right. Yep. Other side of the house, can't see it at the same time as this side of the house, although 2 corners can be seen at the same time.
All right, Tim, so what can we take away from this scenario?
Okay, to recap, the insured had a plumbing leak in the kitchen. Only 1 cabinet was damaged, but the insured wanted coverage or replacement for all 8 of her kitchen cabinets and all of the cabinets in the adjoining dining room. As for the 8 cabinets in the kitchen, I would say most likely under most states and most policies, the insurer would owe matching if it is reasonable to do so, to give an adequate repair so that the insured has a kitchen that matches just as well as it did before the loss. As for the dining room, since it's in a different room, it is most likely that those cabinets would not have to be replaced because they are not viewable in the same line of sight.
That's reasonable. I'm okay with that. And Mike, what's your takeaway?
Sounds reasonable to me too, Alissha. And at least in my place, yeah, you take some work. It would take some effort to get everything to match if we had a slightly damaged cabinet here.
Well, I would like to see a picture of whatever artwork Hannah was doing to your cabinets.
I can send it to you.
All right, Tim. And if I'm an adjuster who wants to know more, where can I go?
I could go to plrb.org and click on Coverage Research tab. PLRB members have access to all of PLRB's legal materials. PLRB has compiled a 50-state survey of the matching issues. So we go through the regulations and the Department of Insurance bulletins and the case law from all 50 states broken down that are related to matching. So that's a great place to start if you have a matching question in a given state, and a resource I encourage you to use.
And Mike, I'm sure there's more information that they can find as well.
You can always check out the education tab. And if somebody's interested, check out the show notes on the podcast, because we'll also have links to all the cool materials that we have at PLRB for you.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your time. I'm going to go check my cabinets when I get home, and we'll see each other next time.
All right, sounds good.
So long, everyone.
The views and opinions expressed in this resource are those of the individual speaker and not necessarily those of the Property and Liability Resource Bureau, its membership, or any organization with which the presenter is employed or affiliated. The information, ideas, and opinions are presented as information only and not as legal advice or offers of representation. Individual policy language and state laws vary, and listeners should rely on guidance from their companies and counsel as appropriate.